Hi everyone, Chris Sawyer here. Welcome back to the Varietal Show. I am very excited today to be talking about Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc. Chenin Blanc. An amazing grape varietal that we've got a little bit to tell you about. So without further ado, I'm going to drop back here and I'm going to introduce you to the great Craig Haarmeyer. Hey Craig,
Hello.
how you doing?
Hello, great to see you.
These are the fabulous wines that Craig makes. This is his Chenin Blanc. This is a very special one. We're going to talk about those. And we're also going to get into a little bit about Zinfandel because here we are in the outskirts of Sacramento right now. And this is amazing, Craig. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure.
And, I've known Craig for a few years here, and this man is very passionate about a grape variety that he and I know quite a bit about. A little tidbit about Chenin Blanc. If you were a baby boomer, you probably know a lot more about Chenin Blanc than most of the younger people because Chenin Blanc back in the 60s was the bomb. It was the white wine grape of California. And in fact, there's a really great statistic about the fact that in 1980, there were 50,000 acres of Chenin Blanc planted here in California. And there were less than 10,000 acres of Chardonnay. So within a 5-year period, that completely switched and Chardonnay caught on fire and it became the #1 grape. But where we're at right now is just on the outskirts of Sacramento and also the area of Clarksburg. Clarksburg was the kingdom of Chenin Blanc. There was great Chenin Blanc growing in Napa Valley, Mendocino, some in Sonoma County, but definitely Clarksburg was it. If you go back in history about Chenin Blanc and why this white grape is so interesting, it really goes back to the Loire Valley in France, where the kings lived. It was a great grape, and it still is today, and probably one of my favorite areas is the Vouvray area, which is an amazing area where you can make not only kind of dry styles, but also sweet styles of Chenin Blanc as well. So, Craig, here I am in your parlor. This is the great winemaking studio of Craig. So tell everyone a little bit about what made you so excited about Chenin Blanc. Of all the grapes that you as a young winemaker could have been working with, why Chenin?
Well, first of all, it's been one of my favorite varietal wines to drink, to just enjoy. And, starting mostly with drinking Vouvray, stuff from the Loire Valley, Sauvignon in particular for me, I've enjoyed for years. And South Africa, a lot of those Chenin heavy field blends make some pretty compelling wines as well. So that was kind of an aha moment for me. And also when we first started making Chenin in '09, I was really kind of struck by how varietally correct the fruit growing right here was. And so that really got me excited. It really kind of, that was my first kind of aha moment with Chenin.
Pretty amazing. Chenin, for everyone that is not familiar with it, so there's Sauvignon Blanc, which is very aromatic, pretty high acid. Chardonnay, which is good. It can be very big. It can be very small. Kind of very thin too. But this is like really kind of that middle ground where it's got this great texture to it. Pretty color. It's always kind of this hay bale kind of yellow, light yellow, beautiful light golden. It's a beautiful grape. I mean, how big are the clusters for everyone to know?
It depends where we're sourcing. So in Clarksburg, where the water table is high, yields are much higher, clusters are much bigger, so are the berries. So clusters can typically be, sometimes almost football size, depending on the vintage. Sometimes they're much smaller. Past couple of years, we've seen smaller clusters in Clarksburg than we normally do. And then you go up towards the foothills and some kind of drier, more austere climates and soils, and you can find average cluster size, like maybe with the size of a tennis ball.
Yeah, pretty amazing. So, I mean, it's just a great grape, and you make 6 different versions of it. That's crazy. I mean, and they're all from different vineyards or different stylistic changes. Tell everyone a little bit about what made you kind of like you could have just done one, but you do 6. Tell everyone a little bit about that.
Well, when we started out with just Clarksburg Chenin, we were making just one still wine made in stainless steel. And then I thought, well, let's see what happens if we barrel ferment some. So that was the second step. And then, as a lot of winemakers do, every vintage we would just under crown cap bottle some wine while it's still fermenting, and just play with that with the holidays, just a fun drink. And it kind of occurred to me that maybe we could do a sparkling version of Chenin on our own as well. So in very small lots, we've been doing that since 2013. And then from there, I just started just sussing out different vineyard sources for Chenin, and have stumbled upon a couple, older plantings that make some really compelling wines.
Yeah.
And,
that's great. Compelling. That's the right term about these kinds of wines. I mean, I'm tasting this one right now. Tell everyone a little bit about this special one that we've got, and the name itself and why it's so special.
we call it Cresci because that is the name of the man who planted the vineyard in 1981. There's 1 acre planted. The soils, this is from the Borden Ranch sub-AVA, and the soils are pretty compelling as well. It's mostly pink granite and quartz. There's also metamorphics and sedimentary alluvial deposits there. It's quite warm there. We do very little work in the vineyard. We sucker in shoot position, and the canopy gets pretty big. It has to be grapes. This is one of the sites where the clusters are very small, about the size of maybe a fist and smaller. It retains its acidity pretty well too, so we can get it a bit riper than we normally do for a lot of our Chenin. We just actually got some cuttings and at the same site top worked their Chardonnay over to this Chenin, so we have now just almost a little over 2 acres of this.
Great. Well, it sure is great. I mean, I think that the other thing that I'm really getting out of this wine that, some people, when they think about Chenin, it's a little bit off-dry from the old days, like where it was a little bit sweet, and that's why people liked it. I mean, we weren't where we're at today, where dry is super in vogue, but I mean, this is pretty dry. So tell us a little bit about your style and how you make this wine, especially to pick up the personality of that vineyard.
Well, what I like to think of our project here with Chenin is its exploration of California terroir through the lens of Chenin. So we treat all the wines in the same fashion. We pick based really mostly on pH and acidity. Of course, phenolic ripeness is important. Flavors. If we have dark seeds and separation and a good pH, sugars aren't as important to us. So we tend to pick a little bit earlier. Usually everything comes in we pick up about under 21 bricks. 22 is pretty ripe for us. This one sometimes we can ripen to about 22 bricks. Everything comes in, we give it a foot tread. We press it in this little basket press here. Most of our lots are small enough to where we can do a couple press loads a day for each lot. We also like to get lots of oxygen to our must. So the juice, instead of trying to keep oxygen away, we do the opposite. We splash it around a little bit. We don't protect it from oxygen. The juice actually gets brown. I like what Kongsgaard has said about this process. He refers to it as death and resurrection. Yeah. And that's kind of how it feels, because when you're at the press and you see this beautiful, beautiful green juice, because it is a green grape, coming off the press, and then the next day it's brown, you think that you made some horrible mistake. But then it always comes back and makes a really kind of durable wine that's impervious to oxygen. So many times you open these bottles and they're maybe better on the second or third day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that it's the thing about Chenin Blanc that's really amazed me is just how, you taste it right off the bat. Like, you just pop it open, pour it. It's a fantastic wine, but it's really given a little bit of time in the glass. I mean, it gets to be a better wine, and in in the case of a full bottle, sometimes it's even better the next day.
Absolutely.
And I mean, these are young wines. I mean, you sell through your stuff pretty fast, and I do want to note that he's wearing a Cordy Brothers hat. Now, Cordy Brothers, for those of you that don't know the Sacramento wine scene, Daryl Cordy is the god of this scene here. And you worked with Daryl at the shop inside the grocery store. I was there yesterday, you guys. I had one of the best sandwiches. It was this French club sandwich, with the bacon and the ham and turkey with it. It was so good, and I just enjoyed just being there and feeling the feel. I mean, this is a grocery store that's been there for 70 years, and Daryl just has a style all his own, and he's very picky about things. He does not like wines that are above 14% alcohol. He doesn't want a big juicy butter bomb thing like that. And he loves your stuff. And he's been a fan of yours. You're a fan of his. Tell us a little bit about really what got you started in the wine industry in the first place.
Well, it's funny you should. Well, maybe not funny. I am wearing a cap after all. But one of my earliest memories is seeing Daryl and a local restaurateur,
Viva.
in my parents' kitchen. So I've been around food. My parents owned restaurants, and they owned in the late 70s a wine shop above one of their restaurants. So I've grown up around food and wine. I grew up in my parents' restaurants. So I've been drinking wine and enjoying wine since before I was, legally able to do that. So, so these fermented things have always, fascinated me.
Yeah.
So through coming up through my parents' business and then working in college and during restaurants and around, and I started brewing when I was in college, and then in grad school, one of my professors was a winemaker. So I got to see small-scale home winemaking, and soon after that, I met Charles Myers, who operated in this space since 1972. So I've just kind of come up naturally through food, and no formal education,
That's amazing.
just tasting and evaluating and enjoying.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. And like once again, you guys, we're here in really, this is West Sacramento. I mean, we're right on the causeway is just behind us here. The causeway is what separates UC Davis and this little area of Sacramento, where we're in the harbor area here. And there's like the shipping of the old days used to go out here. You'd come bring your loads of feed down to the harbor, and then you put it on a boat and you ship down to Sacramento to God knows where. And so this is really an agricultural zone that is really special to the United States. A lot of people don't understand that about Sacramento, about how the gold was coming down from the mountains, the wines were coming from Napa and Sonoma, and the great crops were coming from here, and it was a melting pot of all of this. And your parents were restaurateurs, which is great. I mean, what a fun thing to get into. And, for Chenin, I think that really, like I said, Clarksburg, which is absolutely this way it probably starts about 5 miles that way. And I was just there last night, and it was fantastic. It's such a lovely area. It's really right on the delta. When you're looking at San Francisco and you look due east from San Francisco, you'll see some certain areas where the water kind of goes through to these delta areas, and this is where it eventually comes to, is right out here. This big causeway and all this Clarksburg area is really fascinating. So tell us a little bit about the second wine here too. This is on Foudre. So here we have, this is the 2019. This is the new vintage about it. To really get into it. This is the St. Ray. So why is it named St. Ray?
That is just early on. We started with working with a lot of Spanish and Portuguese varieties in Lodi, and the name just kind of stuck.
Okay.
So this vineyard is in Clarksburg, just down the road from where we are sitting now. And we call it On Food because this is the exception to the rule in terms of élevage. This is the one wine that we put into new oak. And we put it into new oak because we use large format, and it's impossible to find secondhand neutral oak in like, you can find 500 liter puncheons fairly often, but anything bigger than that, you have to buy brand new. So each vintage we buy a new large oval cask, and this is the wine that we use to season up the oak.
Yeah, nice. I mean, it's a lovely, lovely wine. I mean, there's a lot of, this has such high acid too. I mean, this is a really great one where you capture the natural acidity in this glass. You know, the wood is there, but it's not really a big commanding kind of wood like a Chardonnay would be. This really just has a nice nuance to it, whereas you get this ton of fruit, but it's very concentrated. You know, tell us a little bit about the vineyard sourcing on this one.
So this is farmed by David Ogilvy, who's a part of the Wilson family. So this is Wilson family vineyards. This is an organically farmed parcel that is down near the town of Cortland. So it's pretty far south in the Clarksburg AVA. It's right on the other side of Elk Slough from another Chenin. And like I said, it's organically farmed. It's on wire. It's cropped at about 3 tons to the acre. Clusters are about kind of medium sized, and like all the other Chenins, with the exception of the new oak, we process it in the same basket press, oxygen, no corrections to chemistry, no added yeast or bacteria. So alcoholic fermentation and malolactic fermentation are spontaneous, and they happen in large areas.
Yeah, that's great. You know, the Wilson family, the Ogilvies, and the Wilson Ranch. I mean, this is a big producer here. I mean, some of you might know Dry Creek Vineyard in Dry Creek Valley of Sonoma County. They usually do a Wilson Ranch designate from there. People source fruit from there. How did you get this little patch that you like so much?
I think that you know, since most of the older plantings of Chenin in California there's so little of it. Those of us who have a thing for Chenin, those vineyard sources are pretty much all spoken for. So if you want to make good Chenin Blanc in California, you need to kind of look a little bit more inland. And I think that you know, David farms this stuff organically, and he's probably one of the guys in the Clarksburg area that has a focus on organic farming. And so a lot of these smaller producers discovered him and started sourcing there. I've known about this vineyard for a long time. We've only been working with it for about 4 or 5 vintages. We had other Clarksburg Chenin Blanc sources, but the more I got to know David and the vineyard and the farming, the more I realized that I should probably check it out myself.
Yeah.
So in 17, we just started picking a ton of fruit, and we've been slowly ramping up, making a bit more of this one.
That's great. I'm a big fan of Wilson, and David is a great guy. I got to meet him a year or so ago when I judged the state fair competition, and we went out to have this big dinner at the sugar mill, and he was there as being honored, and he should be. I mean, this is an amazing area out in Clarksburg. So yesterday I was out there, and it was the celebration of National Zinfandel Day, and to be really honest with you guys, it doesn't matter what yesterday was, because every day is National Zinfandel Day, according to us. So you do make a great Zinfandel too. I mean, this is the middle of California. Let me say one thing about Zinfandel too. It is the state grape. And we call this the state grape. It is ordained as that. It's because this really came in a long time ago when the gold rush first started, really in the 1850s on a big scale. This grape was starting to be cultivated here, up in the Sierra foothills, down here in the valley as well. You fell in love with this grape. What got you so into Zinfandel of all the grapes you could have been working with?
Well, being born and raised in this area, Zinfandel has always been a big predominant grape, whether you were drinking it here or growing it here, or making it here. And so I've just grown up with it, and there's so many great old vines, old vineyards that it just seems to me like if you're making wine in this area, you have to make Zinfandel. And so so we actually make 3 different Zinfandels.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's taste it. I mean, I can't just sit here without tasting this stuff. Good color, obviously. This is a red Zinfandel, everyone. There was a time, and it actually happened kind of because of a vineyard up on top of, in Amador County called the Beaver Vineyard, where white Zinfandel became an invention, where the only reason it was called white Zinfandel is because you pressed it really fast when it was sweet. You pressed it so it didn't take on the color of the red grape, and that's really what it is. It's a very hardy red grape, and that's why it was able to survive here in California, especially before the Prohibition hit. And along came Petite Sirah, which was kind of the second big grape that came in here. But this is way before Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Grenache, all these other very famous kinds of grapes came into California. This was a big deal. What was your first experience with Zinfandel?
My first experience that I can remember is Heights.
Heights, Napa Valley.
And some Dry Creek stuff as well.
Yeah.
That was in the 70s. Since then, I've discovered more foothill zins and Lodi as well.
Yeah, so where's this coming from?
So this is in the Clements Hills sub-appellation of Lodi. It's a vineyard planted in the 1920s. It's own-rooted, dry-farmed, head-trained, and much like most of the old Zinfandel vineyards in Lodi, there are other varieties interplanted. So we tend to pick a bit early, and also we make a pass through the part of the vineyard that has a fair amount of Mission and Mataro interplanted. So this is maybe 4 or 5% of those other 2 varieties in there. And we just like making a field blend with this.
Lodi is such an interesting area for the heritage of California, everyone. It was also the watermelon capital of the world at one point. Sometimes you'll go out in the vineyards and you'll see like an old dormant seed actually caught on. It's been dead supposedly for 40 years, and here comes there's a big watermelon vine coming out of the bottom near this, and you go like, wow, that's crazy. And you hear from the farmer, yeah, there used to be some watermelons planted here, and that just seeded itself. But it just is a big landscape there. The Clements is kind of like, as you're going up to the Sierra foothills, that's a road that kind of goes a little bit east of downtown, northeast, and there's a little area called Clement, and it's a fun area because there's actually a lot of waterways right through there. And that's really one of the great things about this is you really can water these grapes. They have waterways, and a lot of this stuff is coming down from the Sierra foothills where the water is coming from, other than like where we're here right now in the Sacramento area, where we're kind of the delta. It's kind of a bigger, elongated part of the bay, whereas that is a really fresh water coming in there. It's a very special place, in a lot of ways. But Zinfandel is definitely the king grape there. And you've got a great spot here. I think this is a wonderful style. It's very elegant, sophisticated. It's got the spice punch on the back end, but it's not big and heavy. It's not porty. Back in the old days, I'm sure you had a few of those bottles too that were big, porty styles of Zinfandel. We have gone to a different world now with Zinfandel, and I think that this is a great example of that. It's something that has a lot of character to it. Great site-specific one. That you got this from the sub-area of Lodi, but also it's got a full mouthfeel that really what you can do with Zinfandel if you do it right, like this man does. I think it's a great example.
I think this particular vintage shows a little bit more ripeness, a little bit more classic Zinfandel flavors and aromas that we're all used to, but it is much leaner and lighter than a lot of other expressions of Zin from this area.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, I want to thank you for having me here, just to be able to taste these wines. You guys, this Craig Haarmeyer is a big deal. This is his little place. It may seem small, but to me, he's really become the guy that I think about. Chenin Blanc. That's a really great grape, and I think about American. I think about Craig. I think about what he's done to commit himself to making 6 different versions of it and getting this fruit from some of the great older vines that are out there. The same thing with this Zinfandel. It's a real, true Zinfandel. And sometimes, we find so many Zinfandels, and we were just, so happy to be celebrating Zinfandel Day yesterday, but every day is Zinfandel Day. And I think this is a great example. So you can find Craig's, the Haarmeyer label. You can look up the website on the just on your internet connections, but it's spelled Haarmeyer. So Haarmeyer. Craig Haarmeyer, thank you so much for having me, my
Cheers,
friend.
Chris. Great to see you.
So fun.
Cheers.
Thanks, you guys, and please join in. We'll be back next week. We'll have more fun. Everything's happening here. This is Sacramento. There's Clarksburg right over there. That's Craig Haarmeyer, and you just had a Chenin Blanc experience. Boom! Cheers!